The day I lost my name. It's strange how silence can sound like breaking glass. That morning, when I stood in what used to be my home, the walls bare, drawers emptied, even the framed wedding photos gone, it didn't feel like a robbery. It felt like an erasure. Like someone had reached into my chest and stolen every version of me that had ever believed in love. His name was Ethan Carter, my ex-husband. And he had taken everything. Not just the house, though that was in his name now. Not just the car or the savings or the company we built together. The one where my ideas made him look like a genius. He took my voice, my reputation, my peace. When the divorce papers came, I didn't even recognize the woman in the accusations. Unstable. Unfit to handle finances. Emotionally volatile. He wrote those words like poetry, and the court believed him. Because Ethan had the charm. The smile that could make lies sound like truth. I still remember the day he walked away, his suit pressed, his eyes empty. He didn't even look back when I said, "You're leaving me with nothing." He just smirked. "You never had anything, Claire. You just borrowed my life for a while." Those words branded themselves into me. For weeks, I drifted. Slept on a friend's couch. Ate the same stale cereal every morning. My hands shook whenever I thought of the court hearing. The humiliation. The whispers from people who once admired us. I'd built that life with him. Every deal, every client, every late-night brainstorm. But in the end, he'd rewritten the story to make me the footnote in his success. There's a particular kind of pain that doesn't scream. It seeps. Slowly. Quietly. And that's the pain that started changing me. I stopped calling friends who pitied me. Stopped explaining myself to people who already made up their minds. Instead, I started watching Ethan. Not in a desperate way, in a calculating one. I knew him too well. His habits. His greed. His weakness for validation. He couldn't breathe unless someone was admiring him. And that's when the thought came, quiet but sharp. He might have stolen everything money could buy. But there were things he'd never be able to own. Dignity. Legacy. True respect. Those things don't come from control. They come from character. And Ethan, for all his polished arrogance, had none. I started rebuilding myself from the ashes he left. I got a job at a marketing firm downtown. Low pay, long hours, but it was mine. I saved every dollar. I studied. I listened. While he flaunted his wealth at charity galas, I was in the backrooms learning how to rebuild what he destroyed. Smarter this time, quieter this time. Then one night, a headline stopped me cold. Carter Dynamics expands into medical tech. That was my concept, the one I'd designed before the divorce. The one he'd dismissed, then quietly patented in his name. I remember staring at that headline until my tears dried. And in that silence, a decision was made. If Ethan Carter wanted to build his empire on my stolen ideas, I would build something he could never touch. A legacy born not from revenge alone, but from the kind of power that can't be bought. Still, I didn't know yet how deep this would go. How far I would fall before rising. How dark it would get before the light found me again. Because what started as a plan for justice would soon become something much more dangerous, and much more poetic. The spark he never saw coming. There's a quiet kind of revenge that doesn't start with rage. It starts with purpose. Mine began 6 months after the divorce, in a dim corner of a coffee shop in Seattle, with nothing more than a cracked laptop and a list of names that used to believe in me. Each name was someone Ethan had manipulated. Investors, partners, even employees he discarded once they'd served their use. They didn't owe me loyalty. But they remembered me. The woman who stayed late, who handled crises, who never took credit for what wasn't hers. And when I reached out, not as the ex-wife, but as Claire Dawson, the woman Ethan had underestimated, doors began to open. Slowly. Carefully. That's how I met Marcus Hale, a venture capitalist who'd once been burned by Ethan's false promises. He listened to my pitch, a project rooted in the same medical tech concept Ethan had stolen, but reimagined ethically, with better data, cleaner vision, and a heart that wasn't driven by greed. Marcus didn't say yes immediately. But he didn't say no either. He just leaned back and said, You've still got fire in you. Use it wisely. That night, I walked home in the rain. And for the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel small. I felt alive. It was slow at first. Rebuilding always is. I worked out of my apartment, surrounded by takeout boxes and the hum of my old computer. Every line of code, every prototype design, every email felt like reclaiming a breath Ethan had stolen. Meanwhile, his company, Carter Dynamics, grew louder, flashier, emptier. He was the man of the moment. Magazine covers, interviews, red carpets. But beneath the shimmer, cracks began to show. Lawsuits. Rumors. Quiet whispers in boardrooms that his empire wasn't as stable as it looked. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about knowing you don't have to push them. They'll collapse under the weight of their own lies. My own company, Aura Labs, started to breathe on its own. Marcus joined officially. A small team followed, people who wanted to build something meaningful, not political. And every time I saw the Aura logo appear on a document, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about rewriting what he had erased. Still, part of me watched him. From afar. Quietly. Strategically. Because when you've been burned once, you learn to study the fire. Ethan was still charming investors, still holding court at his luxurious events, pretending his world was flawless. But I could see the fatigue behind his smile, the desperate need to be seen. And that's when I realized. He had stolen my material life, but I had taken something far more valuable without even trying. Peace. Self-respect. And the ability to build without lying. But life, it seems, doesn't allow victories without tests. Just when Aura Labs began attracting serious attention, an anonymous complaint landed in my inbox. A legal threat, claiming I'd stolen proprietary data from Carter Dynamics. The irony was almost poetic. Ethan was trying to accuse me of the very thing he had done. I remember sitting in that small office, the hum of fluorescent lights above me, my hands trembling over the letter. For a second, I felt that old fear creeping back, the courtroom flashbacks, the humiliation, the feeling of powerlessness. But then I caught my reflection in the glass window. The woman staring back wasn't the same Claire who once begged him to believe her. She had scars now, and strength carved from betrayal. I folded the letter slowly and whispered to myself, "You want war, Ethan? You just picked the wrong woman this time." Because what he didn't know was that I had proof, emails, drafts, timestamps. Everything that showed the concept was mine long before he filed his patents. And I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to expose him. Not through shouting. Not through revenge disguised as rage. But through truth, the one thing he could never manipulate. What came next would shake his empire to its core. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to watch. The empire begins to crack. Powerful men don't crumble overnight. They decay in silence, piece by piece, until one morning, the mirror refuses to lie. It started small. A rumor in an investor forum. A whisper in the media about ethical inconsistencies inside Carter Dynamics. Nothing explosive yet, just hairline fractures in the polished glass of Ethan Carter's empire. I didn't plant the stories. I didn't have to. Truth has a way of finding its voice, especially when it's been buried too long. My quiet counterstrike began with one file, a digital archive I'd hidden years ago. Inside were my original drafts, timestamps, and blueprints for the medical tech prototype. Everything Ethan had stolen, renamed, and patented as his own. Back then, I didn't think I'd ever use it. I just couldn't bring myself to delete it. Now, it was my lifeline. Marcus helped me find a legal team. Real ones this time, not the kind who bow to money, but who live for justice. We didn't announce anything. We built our case quietly, meticulously. Each document was a nail, each signature a scar reopened. At night, I'd sit by the window of my small apartment, watching the city lights shimmer like tiny fragments of the life I lost. And I'd whisper the same thing to myself every night. You're not destroying him. You're just showing the truth. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about truth anymore. This was personal. He'd humiliated me in front of the world. Now, he would learn what it felt like to lose something that couldn't be replaced: credibility. Aura Labs began to gain traction. The same investors Ethan once dazzled started showing up in my inbox. Curious, cautious, interested. They'd heard whispers of a cleaner, more ethical competitor to Carter Dynamics. A competitor led by a woman who wasn't afraid to rebuild from ashes. Still, the pressure grew. Ethan's legal team sent threats, cease and desists, public statements twisting the narrative, painting me as the bitter ex-wife trying to sabotage his success. He even went on television, eyes gleaming with that rehearsed sincerity, and said, "Some people can't move on. I wish her peace." Peace. The word burned through me like acid. So I made a move he didn't expect. Instead of fighting his PR war, I launched Project Aura, a humanitarian initiative using our tech to provide affordable diagnostics in underfunded hospitals. No luxury marketing. No fake promises. Just action. The media picked it up within days. Headlines read, "Ex-wife of tech mogul leads groundbreaking health movement." And beneath the surface, Ethan's empire began to shake. I saw it in his eyes the night we crossed paths again, the first time in nearly 2 years. It was at a charity gala downtown, a place full of flashbulbs and champagne laughter. He approached me, that same cold smile painted across his face, like a mask he'd forgotten how to wear. "Claire," he said smoothly, "didn't think I'd see you here." I just smiled back, steady, unbothered. "You never really did see me, Ethan." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The flicker of unease in his eyes said everything. Because for the first time in his life, he couldn't control the narrative. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't a ghost haunting his success. I was the storm approaching quietly, steadily, and there was nothing he could buy to stop it. 2 weeks later, Carter Dynamics' biggest investor pulled out. Then another. And another. Internal emails leaked, ones I didn't send but had predicted would surface eventually, proving manipulation in the company's finances. His PR team scrambled. His lawyers blamed disgruntled employees. But the truth was out. And the more Ethan fought to maintain control, the more he unraveled. Meanwhile, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the silence that terrifies. Still, beneath that calm exterior, I could feel something darker brewing. Something I hadn't expected. Pity. Because I realized, the man who once owned everything now had nothing that mattered. No loyalty. No love. No soul left to lose. But this wasn't the end. There was still one final truth left to reveal. A secret buried so deep in his empire that even Ethan didn't know it existed. And when that truth came out, it wouldn't just end his company. It would destroy his entire illusion. The secret beneath his throne. The fall of an empire doesn't make a sound until it's too late. And Ethan Carter was still smiling for the cameras while his empire quietly bled beneath the surface. But I wasn't smiling. Because I'd just discovered something that made every scar, every sleepless night, every humiliation worth it. It started when Marcus forwarded me a set of leaked files, confidential Carter Dynamics internal audits. He said, "Claire, you need to see this." I opened the documents expecting corruption, maybe falsified data, bribery, the usual corporate decay. But what I found made my hands tremble. Ethan's company had been selling faulty medical devices. Prototypes rushed into hospitals to impress investors, used on real patients without full approval. The same devices built on my stolen concept. The ones I had once dreamed could save lives. And now they were hurting people. I sat frozen in my office, the screen's glow flickering against my face. The reality hit me like a tidal wave. He didn't just steal from me. He stole from the innocent. From those who trusted what we once wanted to build for good. For hours, I couldn't move. I just stared at those numbers, those quiet records of pain buried beneath profit margins. And then the rage came, clean, cold, and terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. I gathered every document, every name, every timestamp. Marcus warned me, "Claire, if you release this, he'll come for you harder than ever." I looked him dead in the eye and said, He already did. And I'm still standing. We prepared a report, factual, airtight, undeniable. We didn't leak it to gossip sites or tabloids. We sent it to the New York Sentinel, a publication known for never bowing to power. Within a week, the investigation began. Headlines exploded. Carter Dynamics under federal review. CEO accused of unethical medical testing. Ethan went into hiding. His press team vanished. His board members started resigning one by one. But the real storm came when victims' families stepped forward. Mothers, fathers, children, holding photos of those harmed by his devices. Their pain was now public. Their truth undeniable. And in every photo, I saw the ghost of my dream, twisted, used, and exploited. The media wanted me to comment. They called me the betrayed ex-wife turned whistleblower. But I refused every interview. Because this wasn't about proving I was right. It was about proving they deserved better. Still, when I saw him again, on television, walking into a courthouse with cameras flashing and his once perfect posture broken, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just quiet closure. He'd built his kingdom on lies, and now he was being buried under their weight. But even as his world fell apart, he couldn't resist one last performance. He called me. The number appeared on my phone late one evening. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. His voice was hoarse, almost human. "You win, Claire." Those words hung between us like smoke. For a moment, I almost laughed. The irony was too cruel to ignore. He had taken everything from me. But what he couldn't buy, what he couldn't fake, what he couldn't understand, was peace. "I didn't take anything from you, Ethan," I whispered.
"You gave it alla vi." Silence.
Then the line went dead.
That night, I valke trug se kvit streets, the city lights painting reflections across the puddles.
For the first time in years, I felt light, not victorious but free. Still, one final act remained. Aura Labs was now thriving. We'd been approached by global health organizations, new investors, and even government partnerships. But I didn't want it to be a monument to revenge.
I wanted it to be redemption.
So, I decided to rename it, after the first patient who'd benefited from our prototype. Her name was Grace. And when the new sign went up, the Grace Foundation, it felt like the world finally exhaled with me. But the story wasn't over. Because in the ruins of Ethan's downfall, something unexpected emerged, a secret he left behind in a forgotten file that would change everything I thought I knew about him, and about myself. The thing he couldn't buy. 3 months after the trial ended, Ethan Carter disappeared from the news. His empire was gone. Assets frozen, properties seized, reputation in ruins. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore.
Not until the letter came.
It arrived on a quiet morning. No name on the envelope, just my address written in a shaky hand I recognized instantly. For a long time, I just stared at it. Half of me wanted to throw it away. The other half, the part that still remembered the sound of his laughter, the warmth before the betrayal, couldn't. Inside was a single page. No excuses, no explanations. Just a few lines written in ink that bled slightly at the edges.
In Claire.
They tell me I might not make it out of this alive. I don't want your forgiveness, but I need you to know, I never meant for it to go that far. I was chasing something I thought would make me whole. Turns out, I was just running from who I really was. There's a file attached. It's the truth I never told. EE. At the bottom of the envelope was a USB drive.
My heart pounded as I plugged it into my computer.
And there it was, years of records, transactions, and personal notes.
Ethan's diary.
His real one. Entry after entry, he wrote about his fear of failure. How he grew up watching his father lose everything. How he swore he'd never be poor, never be powerless. And how, when he met me, he saw someone who could build what he couldn't. So he convinced himself he had to control me to survive. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. A portrait of a man trapped inside his own hunger. By the end of the final entry, I was crying. Not for the man he became, but for the boy he once was. The one who never learned that love doesn't require ownership. A week later, I read in the news that Ethan had turned himself in, offering full cooperation in exchange for leniency toward his remaining employees. He'd finally done something selfless. Quietly. Privately. Without cameras. I didn't attend his sentencing. But I sent a letter, one sentence only. Thank you for finally telling the truth. After that, I stopped checking the news altogether. Because the story was no longer about him. It was about me. And the life I was rebuilding, one built not on revenge but renewal. The Grace Foundation flourished. We partnered with rural hospitals, launched educational programs, funded young female innovators. Every project carried a piece of the woman I became. Scarred, yes, but strong in ways I never imagined. And sometimes, late at night, when I lock the office and walk through the quiet hallways filled with laughter and light, I whisper to myself, This is what he couldn't buy. Peace. Purpose. Integrity. The things that survive when everything else burns. I still wear the same necklace I had the day I lost everything. A simple silver pendant, tarnished but unbroken. It reminds me of who I was, and who I chose to become. Because revenge, I learned, isn't about taking back what was stolen. It's about building something they can never touch. And in the end, Ethan Carter may have taken my wealth, my name, my past. But I took something far greater. My soul, restored. As I look out over the city from my office window, the skyline glinting under a new dawn, I whisper his name one last time. Not with hate. Not with love. Just with peace. Goodbye, Ethan. And with that, I finally let go. Final message. Some people spend their lives chasing power, believing it will heal what's broken inside. But real power, the kind that lasts, is found in the heart that forgives, rebuilds, and rises higher than the pain ever reached. She didn't destroy him. She outgrew him. And that was the most poetic revenge of all.